welcome everybody. Welcome back to Some Faces as well. It is so exciting to be sharing the space with you again this evening, or newly this evening. I'm really, it's the third session today of these kind of existential offerings live events, and I'm just starting to have it as something that I really look forward to, because each session is so different and the discussions always leave me with so much to think about, and as ever I just want to kind of bring in that idea that even though we're just squares on each other's screens, we are real people in real time joining together and sharing this experience, and it's just so special. I know that some of the people here have bought tickets that are free, some of them have donated, some of them have spent money. Either way, it's just so, it's so wonderful, because what we are giving, all of us, is our time, and that is so valuable, and I'm so grateful. So thank you so much to the people that are live and watching for sharing your time, and thank you so much for the people that will watch this in the future for using your time, this precious time, to be engaging with these existential ideas. And even though we're in the present today, we're going right back to the past to explore ancient existential ideas with none other than Maria Mendez, who is joining us all the way from Argentina. So thank you, Marcos. We met in Athens, and I remember you were standing there kind of improvising your talk passionately about Greek philosophies and how they're still relevant today. And I just thought, right, we need to have these ideas spread further. So this is the reason that Marcos shares the space with us today. And I won't chatter and take up any more time. Marcos, I just welcome you, and welcome you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. It's a wonderful thing to be here. And yes, in fact, we met in Athens, and well, you might expect a little bit of the same things here, because not very much in the preparation of the topics, but of the, let's say, culmination of many of the years of work and of study in these things, and the basic ideas governing the centers of the talk. So well, thank you all for being here. I'll say hello from Argentina, the other side of the world. So thanks for taking the time to be here with us. And yeah, I'm not very much for introductions. Let's just say that I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have been for the last almost 10 years. And I find that existentialism, at least those ideas and those concepts, are very helpful in the clinical practice. In fact, at some point, I'd say that the existential dilemmas are so central to the human experience that we can't avoid them. And it's perfectly clear that one or at a certain point, we all have to face those things. So many people come to the practice and say, okay, I have this problem. I have this big luggage on my back, and I can't get rid of it. So the basic concept today will be that, well, these questions, they persist throughout history. And the idea of the existential school as a school of thought is, well, let's say, has some certain issues. I don't know if you're all familiar with the idea of existentialism, but and I repeat that anyone can interrupt me if my words don't come clearly enough. The idea of existentialism is complex, because the basic thoughts are not very clear. Why? Because we have existentialists that are atheists, that are theists, existential Christians, agnostics. So the basic ideas can be applied to many things. The the school of thought just came to be, at least formally, with in France after the Second World War. I like that there's a lot of European public, because well, you might be all very much in touch with the history of that. Maybe not yourself, but yes, on the generations before you. Very different than the experience we have here in South America. So after the Second World War, at least in France, the ideas just started to be. And well, I think you might have heard of Jean-Paul Sartre. He monopolized the idea of the existentialist. He just adored the word, which is very different from, let's say, Albert Camus, which hated the word existentialism. He defined himself as an absurdism, the absurd. Sorry if my pronunciation is. I find myself saying some words for the first time in English, because of course I've studied them in Spanish. So I apologize in advance if some of the words don't come up very, very, very well. So you might have heard of the basic concept of Sartre, that the existence precedes the essence, which is, in a certain way, I'm not trying to make a lecture about this, because there are many far better explanations for this. I'm just trying to introduce the concept so that then we can go towards the antiquity or the ancient times. I think antiquity is just for the furniture, right? No? Okay. The idea of the existence precedes the essence comes in an antagonistic way to the essentialism, the idea that Plato and Aristotle had, that everything has an essence, and that everything has the thing that makes the thing what it is, and not some other thing. So if you lost that would no longer be that thing. The basic explanation is the knife. You can have a handle that's plastic, wood, no handle at all. But if you take the blade, it's no longer a knife. So the essence is that characteristic which is inseparable from the thing itself. So Sartre says, no, that's not it. What if we just don't have any essence and we create ourselves, which is a way of thinking about it, which is a way that I don't particularly agree. And that's the thing. I don't agree in a way with one of the most influential existentialists for the world and of history, because, well, Sartre never did any clinical practice, never studied the development of the humankind and how we come from a newborn to something. So there is, in a sense, a school of thought that goes towards that, saying, okay, no, we're just a blank canvas, and everything is supplied, which in a certain way has led to many of the curious aspects of today. This idea that we're just what we choose to be, which is maybe not the case. We have certain limits, and the development, the development of let's say the cognitive functions are of course rooted on the body. So the basic idea of Sartre might have been mistaken in a certain way, but it surely has done some good things for the confrontation of ideas, which is in fact the basic concept we have here, and that we can talk about all those things. So the idea would be that the that the existentialists of the post-war World War focused on the, let's say, phenomenology of the understanding of the humankind, trying to incorporate the subjective experience of the person to the understanding of reality, which is in fact up until today the basic framework of existential psychotherapy phenomenology, existential phenomenology. So it's a very interesting concept. It's changed a lot of the way we thought of the humankind, and in fact it's very unique in its perspective. I'm not saying Sartre just said nonsense all along. He had many great ideas. For example, the idea of hell, which is not a new idea in itself, but I don't know. And please correct me if I'm not saying that the title of the name correct in the right way. It's behind closed doors, might it have been, or something like that. In Spanish, it's a puerta cerrada.
I think it's no exit in English.
No exit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That idea of the Sartrean hell, which is no other thing than the people, others, which is very unique. And I can understand why he might be able to think that way. But he missed the idea that the others are also the ones that introduce us to the world. So this idea that we come in a blank canvas is, well, to say the least, naive. In fact, he even said towards the end of his career and his life that he gave little importance to the material aspects of human experience, which is again a very sane thing to do, to be able to see the errors of our past. But the idea would be that these questions, the questions of death, meaning, freedom, Sartre's very much into freedom, the whole excess of freedom we have comes with an angst, or comes with the suffering, which is another of the aspects of this school of thought. So it's all these questions have been since the beginnings of humankind. So the existentialism, in a sense, has been around, well, for as long as we are here. The questions are and persist. So I, thinking about today, I came up with a question myself. Why did we start calling existentialism, at least the formal school of thought, after the World War? And I have no good answers, sorry, but there is an aspect that I think it's crucial, that the questions went further away from religion than before. So the Greeks, at least for our Western traditions, I'll focus much more on the Greeks than, let's say, on some other parts of the world, but they made the same questions we do now, exactly the same ones. One could say, well, we copied them, and how can it be that we haven't got any answers after so long? And it came to me also a quote from a very good psychoanalyst and sociologist that's called Erich Fromm, who said that the technology advances much more than the wisdom we have. So the wisdom we possess now is not at all what we need, because, well, we're making the same questions as Plato. We're making the same observations as Aristotle and Socrates. So one must wonder if we will ever find the answers and the questions for meaning. Well, what is the meaning of it all? At least my answer is, well, there is no meaning, which might be within the school of thought of existentialism, the branch of nihilism. The nihilists say that, well, there is no apparent meaning, and there is no God, and there is no nothing that can actually give the meaning. There, I would say there's a smaller branch that says positive nihilism, negative nihilism. The negative nihilism would be the character of Dostoevsky. If there is no God and there is no immortality, then well, then everything is permitted in Brothers Karamazov. But there is also the positive nihilism, which is, okay, there is no meaning at all. We are responsible for creating it. We are the ones that give life meaning, which is a powerful thing, a very powerful concept, to say that we are responsible. But it's also a burden. It's also a very, very harsh reality that we are responsible for ourselves. So, well, I think that if you're here now, might be because you find yourself challenging those ideas. You find yourself wondering all of this, because let's face it, it's not a very popular subject, all of this. You don't go to a party and say, okay, yeah, but what's the meaning of all of this? Or saying, okay, do you all know we're going to die someday? You won't be very much appreciated in the party. So there is a certain element of uncomfortableness in all of this, a very deep uncomfortableness, I would say. But it's also charged with a very profound sense of wondering. And of course, I say to you all, you can ask the questions you need, but I think at some point we all have the wondering of saying, okay, but why is this the way I live? Why is this the way I suffer? Which is in fact one of the tools we use in psychotherapy. We try and get the questions with a certain sense of weight behind them, not just the hollow words. Again, hollow words, that words with nothing behind them, to find the person asking the right questions, or at least the questions that well, they are able to handle, because it's very difficult to face yourself with a question that nobody can answer other than you. And the ideas and the problems this brings are I would say eternal, but it's a very weird way of talking about the human experience, because in fact the human experience is finite. So I'd say they will accompany the experience of all humankind, but we individually have a very different way of approaching it. So I'll go back to the idea of the ancients. Well, I also came across. I'll take the opportunity to introduce all of the English speaking audience or participants to maybe the greatest writer of Argentina, which is Jorge Luis Borges. I don't know if you've known him, but he's wonderful. It's like reading Edgar Allan Poe for us. at the last years of his life, he was in a project of having the most important 100 books. So he took the time to choose each one of them. He didn't complete all the collection, but he introduced in my curiosity one of the most ancient stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a very odd choice. But in there, it's the Epic of Gilgamesh is a Sumerian, let's say, myth, a story about a hero, which, let's say simply, he faced a lot of challenges, of course, but the most important aspect is he was searching for immortality. And, well, he didn't make it, of course. Spoilers for a very old book. But in a certain way, we can see the question of mortality even before the Greek civilization. In fact, the Epic of Gilgamesh inspired a lot of the Iliad and the Odyssey. So we find there even the flood, yes, but also the walk on hell, in hell, that the hero needs to go to hell to find something. Odysseus did it in the Odyssey, Gilgamesh did it in his epic. But I'd like to say that this is the point. There is something there that goes beyond the basic story, the basic narrative which surrounds it, to say, okay, they were wondering what would it be for someone to look for immortality. In a certain poetic way, he found it, because, well, we're still talking about him, so good for him. But the question lies there: what is mortality, and how can we face it? And we're still looking for answers today. There is even a whole branch of psychology that dedicates itself to the people that are dying. And well, it's very difficult for us to symbolize that. So we tried a lot, in a lot of ways. For we are creatures of meaning. We need meaning in our lives. In Greece, in Athens, I mentioned the pareidolia, and I don't know if it's perfectly translated in English, if it's basically that, but it's the principle of the brain to look for patterns and to look for meaning in things, even if they are not there, which might have been a very evolutionary edge for us, but it's still here with us, that we need to look for meaning. I always, at least when I work with teenagers, I give them the idea that color in itself doesn't exist. It's like, what are you talking about? Of course it exists. I mean, look at all the colors we have here. Well, in fact, color is a construction of our brain. It's not something, let's say, objective. Different animals, different eyes see different colors. The colors are the reflection of the light that our eye and our brain are able to produce. But color in itself is not a thing, which is very weird, but which is, again, a testament of the evolutionary presence of meaning in not only in our lives, but surrounding us. So they, of course, it's a strange explanation, but it's in fact the way it is, even if our experience is nothing like it. So, well, these ideas go towards mythology. In mythology, at least, the one I specialize in, which is Greek mythology, we find a lot of the problems of existentialism. So it's like existentialism is a new branch of philosophy. Why would it be so present over so many things so long ago written? And it's like, well, yeah, because existentialism has been around forever, and there is a certain strange parallelism in the idea of psychoanalysis of conscious and conscious, and that's very well established in mythology and philosophy in the ancient world. On one hand, the idea of rationality as the great means of understanding the universe and ourselves, and in a certain way, mythology just came around and saying, but these are the ways we understand the world and ourselves. So the great hero of Greek mythology might be Odysseus, the only mortal one, the only purely mortal, that he suffered a lot. And there we find one of the aspects that I think actually defines existentialism, that life is tragedy, and there's nothing we can do about it. Of course, we have all the techniques and all the technology that allows us to live quite comfortable. We're not very hungry so often. We're not very cold so often. We have the entertainment. We have medicine. Yet, there's nothing we can do with the existential dilemmas. And it comes to mind now. Sorry if I keep on bringing stuff. The Soma of Orwell. Orwell. No, 1980. No, Brave New World, Huxley, where the drug that just applicated, let's say, or decreased all the suffering in oneself. And it's like, if we could do that, if we had a drug, which we have plenty of them, but none that are so at least so effective, should we do it? Should we release the world from the suffering? And even if we can, wouldn't there be a lot of people that saying, okay, but what if I just bring this down? If I burn this up? If I punch this person? So it's another paradox of existentialism. Is suffering something we need to avoid, or is something that makes us who we are? And in a certain way, psychology deals with the suffering, with psychopathology. And of course, I'd say that, again, sorry Sartre that I criticize him so much. He knew nothing of psychopathology. I don't know if you're aware that he even tried to introduce he hated Freud. He absolutely detested him. And there is a movie in the 1960s, Freud, The Secret Passion, I think it's called, that Sartre wrote the first draft of the movie. Well, the director said, no, this just puts Freud in a horrible position. Why would you do that? And that script was discarded. But he tried to introduce a psychoanalysis, even called existential psychoanalysis, which denied the idea of the unconscious. Now, the unconscious is still today debated a lot, even if we, at least here in Argentina, psychoanalysis is quite popular, and not so in Europe or other countries. I found myself seeing that in Athens, which I later called upon to say, okay, you're leaving behind a very useful tool that might be able to explain a lot of what's going on. So the ancient idea of the search for meaning is later present in religion, the constitution of the big religions we have today, as answers for the search for meaning. What does, in a certain way, religion do? It gives you the certainty of what happens beyond death. Wonderful. Like, now you know this is what happens. And every religion gives an answer. So religion is quite useful in that way to release ourselves from the despair that can come from us. Also gives you, okay, this is the way you live. This is the way you need to conduct yourself, which is, again, very useful. And even though in psychoanalysis, Freud was very harsh on religion, he recognized the usefulness it had. Maybe he was too naive to see that it's not about rationality, the thing of religion. It's about much more, and it gives much more even today. Of course, European is going a little further away from religion as people are even more educated, but the rest of the world is another experience, and we see it in the conflicts we're having right now, at least in the Middle East. So these things are still present. The war is still present in the world we have. It's like, no, but the Greeks were from war to war. Well, that's not the Greeks, that's humankind. We just go from one thing to another, and we can even count the years in the world that there were no wars at all, which are very few. So the existential dilemmas are still here, and they have practical aspects to it. There is even the idea of what do we do with the intolerance, and you guys over Europe are much closer to the wars than I am, but there is a specific aspect of saying, okay, what do we do? Do we fight for our survival, or are we able to just talk about it? What do you do when there is no talk available? So there is in these, there are also very practical aspects. In fact, I think of another story written by Camus, which takes the concept of Sisyphus. I don't know if all of you know who Sisyphus is, but he's a character from Greek mythology that cheated on death on 2 occasions, and after that he was condemned by the gods to Tartarus, the hell of the Greek world. He was condemned to carry a huge rock onto the top of the mountain, and at the end of the day, exhausted, he saw how it rolled over all over again, so that he had to go again and again. So he was condemned to meaninglessness. He was condemned to the labor and to the effort without any reward at all. So Camus, many years after, takes that story to talk about suicide, to talk about meaning, and to talk about a very difficult aspect of reality. That's saying, okay, why don't we kill ourselves? So he said, all the questions of philosophy are on second place towards the question of suicide, because on that we find ourselves asking, okay, what makes me want to live the life I have? So it's a very, again, don't talk about suicide on parties, because that's no, uh, it's not an easy subject. Yet it's a very important subject. So it's a very when the health organization talks about that, they of course they give the thing the certain importance, yet they struggle to talk about it and to find the real reasons why people do it, because it's a very difficult aspect and a very difficult thing to understand. It's a very personal experience. So well, it's of course alarming that almost 1 million of people are commit suicide a year, according to the statistics. But it's also a very important thing to talk about, because that's maybe one of the most existential problems we have, because it faces us with our condition. And why would someone choose that? There is, I remember when I was working at a public hospital, that I discussed this with a colleague of mine, saying all suicide is psychopathological, because of course we can see with someone with depression, someone maybe with schizophrenia, but it's all suicide like that? And it's a very difficult. At least I haven't come upon the question in any other place other than myself, but it's well, it's very difficult to face those problems. So, well, we tend to avoid them, and we can avoid them, particularly in our societies, which are meant to distract us. There is a very good book of Vargas Llosa, sorry, another Latin American writer. It's called the Civilization of Entertainment. She's very good and very simple to read. Maybe the translation should be good enough. But we can avoid it for so long, before it punches us in the face, because we, at least, well, not all of us will have to face death at some point. Maybe not ourselves, but yes, on the people we love. We will have to deal with suffering one way or another. So this idea that the world is a nice place where we should be comfortable might be very detrimental for us. It might be very false, which in a certain way comes to the fight of ideas, very poorly equipped. So, well, I think of the Buddhist, one of the four noble truths of Buddhism. Life is suffering, and that's again, we go to the antiquity. We go towards these three fathers of thought, which were Socrates, Confucius, and the Buddha, which changed the way we understood things. But none of them said that life is something nice and something comfortable and something that's a gift from the gods. In fact, Socrates criticized a lot and with good ideas. The Socratic method is still present in our psychotherapy. So the ideas of Buddha and Confucius all come towards the questions of existentialism. What should we do with our life? How do we deal with death? How do we deal with suffering? And are so inextricably linked with ourselves that we find that it's worth exploring all of these things, even if we have no answer. And of course, if you are here, you're interested in one way or another for all of this, and that the basic ideas of existentialism, which in this sort of activities and channels and the offerings, is a wonderful place to explore this and to at least feel that the suffering we might have is not unique to us, because that's another thing that within the psychotherapy sphere we try and deal, that the person comes saying, okay, I suffer specifically, my suffering is unique, and to a certain point it is, but certain aspects of that are absolutely shared between us. So my ideas would be to find a way of asking this, and to find places where we can talk about all of this. Maybe there are some very good guidance in all of these things, and in fact we can even help other people in this network of existential branching for the difficult aspects of life, because I guaranteed you know someone who's struggling with all of this, if not yourself. And that struggling is in a certain way the core aspect of the Greek idea that there's a tragedy. That's why they invented tragedy. Then came the Romans that made them the circus with the Colosseum and the entertainment of death. But the Greeks, and I think we have a mixture of Greek and Roman. That's why we have, I don't know, the World Cup. That's fantastic as it is. It's purely entertainment. But also we have the tragedy. We have the movies, and we have the art that connects us with that part of ourselves. So I hope nobody has fallen into a silent despair, but yes, that we can hear you and see what you have to say about all of this. Of course, there is a lot to learn about ancient times, and I think those 3 figures are a wonderful way of starting. I also recommend Carl Jaspers, that he talks about all of these 3 figures. No, I think he changes Socrates for Jesus. So he talks about those 3 figures as a way of understanding who we are. So I think it's later over there, but I hope everyone's wondering. At least my idea would be that we share questions, not the answers, because of course this is not a lecture that I have the absolute truth, and in fact it's more of the experience we have and the ways we have of understanding ourselves and our lives and the spaces we we we're in, even if it's work, family, um, these sort of places. But how can we apply certain things of this towards the concrete aspects of our lives? I think if anybody um, finds yourself wondering how can we connect all of this, of course it's a very good thing if you can talk and say, I hope nobody's dizzy with all the concepts and the ideas. Sorry if I branch too much.
No, it was exciting to follow all of the different branches and go on such a journey in my own thinking and our own thinking, but then throughout history. And just I'm going to reiterate what Marcos is saying. Let's make this a discussion. Let's make this a questioning, a shared questioning together. And I think the question that comes for me, or the kind of discussion, the exploration that comes for me, is what you say about clients coming to us, or people coming to us, or even for ourselves, that in that moment our suffering feels like the most unique and extreme experience of suffering that could exist. And even as therapists, even as coaches, even as reflective and intelligent beings that know that statistically, historically, that's not the case, but still somehow there's that sense, that big sense, if we're being approached or confronting something in the future or in the moment or in the past that's incredibly difficult for us, that we are isolated in it. I suppose don't want to speak for ages. I would love for other people to jump in.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Tony, go.
So lovely to see you, and thank you so much for doing these things. Awesome. I mean, I've had in my life, I've had 5 suicide friends, which I think is an exceptional number of suicide friends. And the impact of that has made, and I'm a deep absurdist or existentialist. And, my question on a daily basis is about resilience and opposing forces to this absurdity. Because I mean, I think we all get that it's absurd. I think that, every time I read lots of stuff, I resonate more than you can ever believe. But I think the question is how to live in absurdity in a way that is nourishing. And as a, I'm a pathologist by training, so I'm a hard-nosed scientist. So the question always is we know, if you like, the complexity of these questions, but what's the antidote?
Two things come to mind. Of course, Sisyphus and the absurd, but the existential branch of thought comes a bit against the idea that rationality can rid us of all the problems we have. So that's where the subjective aspect comes from. And in a certain way, there is no antidote. At least not an antidote that can work for everyone. Because meaning is a very personal experience. So nobody can, you can try and impose meaning on others. You can try and say, okay, look, this works for me, try it. But that doesn't assure you that it will work. So it's a very close relationship you have with suicide, the absurd. I don't think many people acknowledge the absurdity of all, because it's a very difficult thing to digest. It leaves us very naked onto the world. So that's where the subjective tools come in. At least my faith goes towards the person, goes towards the individual.
So one question, just and then I'll shut up because I could talk for England. Nietzsche, our lovely Nietzsche, who we love so much, the famous camel hypothesis, which I pretty much love. Actually, I use it every day. I mean, I suppose my question is the camel a desensitized absurdist?
And Tony, can I ask you to explain the camel for people that don't?
Sorry. I mean, the camel is, in Nietzsche thought, and it's quite close to Goethe actually. The camel, he believed the four metamorphoses of man was the camel first, then the camel becomes a lion, the lion slays the dragon, and the dragon becomes the child. So he basically said that, and it's very interesting because you use the word Aldous Huxley, who I love. And you use the word was it Aldous Huxley or was it the other guy who came up with the term the proletariat? So let's use the word the proletariat, that Nietzsche came up with the idea the proletariat were camels and that they had desensitized themselves to this absurdity. And then in came the lions who were trying to transform, who were absolutely naked to that absurdity, tried to slay the dragon, and then became the child. So, I mean, there is a question I have on a daily basis in my own world, of which so many people seem to be happy in absurdity, that distresses me really. But I'll shut up on that one now, otherwise I might talk for England.
Well, remember that the camel needs to give way to the lion then to the child. We're talking about Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which is a very good book, very recommended.
Impossible, but brilliant.
Yeah, might be difficult, but within it, all the concepts of Nietzsche. In a certain way, Nietzsche talks about the camel as a metaphor for the animal that's very, very harsh and able to support a lot of weight. In fact, that's the idea, that the camel carries the weight of the hump onto itself, which gives him the chance to survive the desert, which gives it the chance to live. But then it needs to change. It was a very accurate idea that the last metamorphosis is the child, because the child plays, because the child creates, and because the child is in a certain way all potential. So the idea of getting rid of God was not in talking about this idea of God is dead and we have killed him. To be able to create and to create our own morality, our own way of living, makes us the Übermensch, makes us the Ultraman. I don't know in English.
The Overman. The Overman.
The Übermensch. I would say that I agree in a certain sense with Bertrand Russell, one of the great philosophers of Great Britain. He says, I think in an essay about Nietzsche, that we should always listen to him, but be very careful to follow him, because the idea of the Übermensch doesn't consider the idea of others with us, doesn't consider the idea that we can build our own morality for ourselves, because we're never on us alone. I go to Aristotle again. The only ones who don't need others are the beasts or the gods. All of us, we need the other, and that's also the idea of Sartre.
But
He
why?
missed.
But why? I would love to go to a dinner party with all of you and talk about suicide. But why are we so different to the camel?
We meaning who?
This group who are here as a representative,
the
group of existential thinkers or behaviors or whatever.
What makes you think we're so different from the camel?
Well,
maybe we are carrying things.
The reason I think it is because I'm a biologist, and I see that groups of societies have such clusters of different, if you like, types who are there with a different job. Our job is to agitate society, really. And that's
well, I'll go back to the. Do you remember the cave allegory of Plato?
Yeah.
Do you remember why they chose to stay chained and to see the shadows?
No.
Because seeing the truth, because facing all these things is extremely difficult, and not all of us are prepared. And well, one would say also with the Huxley idea, why would someone anesthetize himself? And we do it all the time. we're not exempt of the suffering this entails. So it's a very difficult thing. We try and be children in a certain way, in a Nietzschean way, but it's difficult. And might be that at some point we are camels, and some point we are lions, and some point we are children, and some points we are just too tired to face all of this. So it's a strange weight, this idea of facing all of this. That's why, well, in many ways, religion is still very, very disseminated across the world. Very helpful in many ways, because it's I would not say impossible, but extremely hard to think of everything ourselves. We need to rely on to stand on the shoulders of giants. Umberto Eco has a very good book about that. That's called "On the Shoulders of Giants."
Oh, I need to write.
Because we rely on the ones that came before. And that's why the idea would be they can still teach us a lot, but we need to look further. And if we can't see further, it's because they made the much of the hard work. I don't know what the world would be without the Greeks. I think I can't remember the author, but he talked about the Battle of Marathon as maybe the most important event on the history of Western civilization, because if the Athenians had lost that battle, the world would be a lot different, and democracy would have let's say died in its infancy. So I think I got carried away, but why people
thank you
choose not to.
Well, thank you for the dialogue. I've loved it.
No, but I'd say I find it much more interesting. Why would someone face these things rather than be anesthetized? I think that question is much more relevant. Why would someone choose to face all of this when they can just immerse themselves in I don't know, football, politics, even religion that gives you the answers. There is in psychoanalysis, we talk about, sorry if the translation is not correct, not the fault. How would you say if when something is missing in you?
Mm.
The void.
We call it
the void.
Yeah, it's not exactly void. It's like the castrated when and something is missing.
Mm.
Let's just call it the missing.
Mm.
Fanatism, and Freud makes a very good case of this. Fanatism compensates the missing. So you and the missing might very well be the meaning in life, and that's a missing that cannot be undone. We cannot successfully equilibrate it or balance it. So, of course, the fanaticism, sports, in religion. Remember the thing of the void. It might be the void. I'll have to look for the translation. I've never read Freud in English, which would be a very interesting experience. The fanatism is the compensation of that. We feel that void with that, with our team, with our church, with our values. Mm. And much of the artistic aspects of the child goes towards that. Children find themselves playing with let's say an empty box, and they have a wonderful time. But adults we say, but it's just a box. Mm. Doesn't matter. The children create in the void, in the absence of. Mm. And maybe that's where we, at least the ones that approach these ideas, go towards. We create where there is none. Mm. We make ourselves answers where there is no answer at all. Mm. And that's very difficult. That's might be very, very harsh on or heavy, but in a certain way, these places are wonderful for that. To say that we all are asking the same questions, and what can we do with that? Mm. So I don't know if it's I don't have very optimistic answers for this, at least not in the existential department. But yeah, I hope it answers a little bit of the question.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Where do you place the human encounter? In
the human what?
Encounter, meeting of two persons, the social
encounter, yeah.
Yeah, in this difficult process of trying to deal with existence, or yeah, or the void, or whatever, or so. Well, yeah, you say the child creates in the absence of things, you know. So, and maybe that's easier than to create by means of the human relationship. That's why it's so difficult to relate, maybe, you know. Maybe there's the truth in there or something, I don't know. So the topic of human encounter, does it has a place in this this existentialistic position? Yeah,
I think it was in the 80s or the 70s in Tokyo. There was a very big problem with suicides of young men. So the government consults with a group of psychologists, and the psychologists suggest that as the means of suicide was the train, to jump onto the train, that they put mirrors on the other side of the train, of the place where the train, of the rails. Yeah, the idea was that would give the men like a shock of narcissism, to say, okay, no, I look at myself and I choose not to jump. Well, that didn't work, of course. Why? Because the mirror is never the mirror literally. The mirror we see ourselves by are the relationships we have, are the others, are the encounters. And it was like a very literal way of understanding humankind. So the encounter is not only necessary, is the thing that makes us who we are. If nobody was there to receive you when you were a newborn, you would die. Or even if they give you the food and the shelter, you would still die, because I think it's called white death. That happened, I think it was studied in Poland at the Third War, where many of the adults were killed and many babies were left at the care of very few people. And they gave them the shelter and the warmth and the food, but they gave them no more attention than they needed. There was no, let's say, sorry for the word, eroticization of the subjectivity of the psychic apparatus. So there was like no will to live. So yeah, the encounter is what makes us who we are. That's why Sartre says that the hell is others, because they are very capable of torturing ourselves, but they are also capable of saving. That's where he missed. He just saw the negative aspect of the encounter. And yeah, existentialism is always about people, never in solitude. We might suffer in solitude, but dilemmas are shared. The problems are well, very much faced together. That's at least one of the core ideas of psychotherapy, that an encounter can help you face things that you could not face before. And that's why they approach us or anyone, and that's a very powerful encounter. At least when you click, when you have the chemistry with your therapist, it's a wonderful experience. So yeah, the encounter is central.
It's like the antidote. We found the antidote.
might be for Tony.
Excellent. I like that one.
Yeah.
Well, we need it. We need it, my friend. We need it.
I begin to like Tony. You know.
Well, we'll be there together.
Okay.
Well, that came from an encounter. So yeah, the answer in action.
And Anna says in the chat, all we need is love, and a smiley face.
Well, yeah. I don't know if it was so catchy. All we need is meaning. It's not so.
Yeah.
Not so phonetically attractive.
If Frankel was in the Beatles, that was he'd sing.
Yeah.
So it's of course, the ideas would be put forth very, very well in much more time and much more deep analysis of the Greek culture and of the Buddhism and the ideas they have. And there is a lot of analysis we can make of all of this. Even the Bible has a lot of existential aspects to it. It's, after all, well, very, very inspired in Greek ideas. But that's the book that the Western civilization was built upon. So of course it's in a certain way filled with ideas we can connect, not because of the truth of the idea. I don't know if I don't believe Adam and Eve are a literal story about how we come to be, but yes, that it has certain metaphors. We must remember that we are symbolic creatures. The words we use are metaphors. If I speak of a tree, the word tree means nothing. If we have the meaning shared, that's where the metaphor applies, and we understand each other. So through metaphors and through the stories, as well as, and I think that's the idea of the Greeks. They understood that the metaphors on the myth and the philosophy could coexist, and in fact did in there. But as Tony said, well, biology and science is a wonderful tool. The problem is, and I find it's a very funny question for me, that can science answer all the questions? Is a question that can't be answered by science, because science can't deal with everything.
I think that's a tremendous question. But I mean, one with this thing, do you think that many humans are suppressed existentialists?
What do you mean? What do you mean by suppressed?
Well, conformity has erased their questioning.
Well, that's education for you, formal education.
Because I mean, I have a children's book that my grandchild had, and I think that the modern children books are moving away from metaphor to literal. So it's a bit like, you know.
Oh, I agree.
And it's you wonder whether what's going to happen is that we're going to suppress a lot of it in banality, which I think is a very interesting word.
Well, I see it as well. In this couple of days, I saw some news that in The Simpsons, the new episodes of The Simpsons will not have Homer strangling Bart. Yeah. Because, oh no, you can't show this because the children. And I was like, that's an interesting take on that. That we lose the idea of that's a cartoon. It's not that the people go strangling people because they see Homer. So it was like, that's like going towards the most literal of the readings you can make of that, and in a certain way the most simplistic and superficial idea of that. Of course, it's a funny example, but I agree that we are losing metaphor. We are losing the idea that words are complex things. They're not defined. They're not written in stone, like saying, okay, God means this, well, it depends on where you are and what context and what place and how you use the word. So yeah, I agree with the diagnosis that we are becoming more literal, or at least they are trying to, they, like, who they are. I think it's a lot based on ideology and a way of thinking of people and our children specifically. But it happens over there and happens here in Argentina as well. Literality is quite, I would say, it's like they don't give the child the chance to fall. It's like everything is controlled, and it's no good that they struggle, because when you introduce something to a child, well, they can repeat the word, but they don't quite understand the concept, the abstract idea. Yet it's a struggle they have to make to keep incorporating things. So the idea of the literality is very, yeah, I would say it's poisonous enough as it is to not make people think very, very deeply. Thinking has never been easy. Has never been economically friendly. In the sense of the brain. The brain itself, it's quite lazy. It tries to deal with everything, even information, as efficiently as possible. So it is going against the current, against the waves. But I think it's still a fight that's worth giving, to try and think. I don't think it's a very good pathway not to think about things and not to connect with things, because it's not only that you lose the capacity to think abstractly of complex ideas, but you also lose the ability to connect with the emotions that go within. So and that's even more difficult to counterweight, because they chop off the possibility of of connecting with high emotions and powerful emotions, but also with harsh emotions. So that's part of life, the both extremes. I hope everyone leaves here with many questions.
It's interesting because we came in thinking about ancient existential thinking and kind of following it, questioning its trajectory, but this part of the conversation is quite disturbing to think of where that future will go. Can we get to the point, as if existential ideas started at the start of human civilization, is the trajectory that we're following that eventually we won't question? Are we questioning less deeply? I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing to think that. I think, generally speaking, the like you've been saying, the value in storytelling, the value in myth, the value in arts, the value in performance, all of this has been replaced by other value systems that have just been, really, really shoved into the faces and the psyches of the population. And it's not a comfortable thought. It's quite an oppressive thought to think, where does that go from here?
But you might want to think, what are we doing here today? Aren't we trying to deal with some aspects of the human reality in a deep way, and in a deep and yeah, maybe disturbing idea. That's why the dystopian authors are so interesting to me, because they show a part of the reality which could come to be. I mean, I love the T-shirt that's saying of Orwell that says, "I told you so." It's,
I think that's brilliant.
I warned you guys, not with much anticipation, and we have a constantly news about the state of double thought. I saw in England those interesting news that police goes to your place if you don't have the right idea, if you protest against something that's not should not be protested against. So it's, well, that's Orwellian, all right. And that's why thinking has always been problematic. But at least in a community way, is a very powerful thing. But also in the psychotherapy department is, okay, think about yourself and who you are, and who you want to be, and who you can be. So yeah, I don't find that it's more disturbing now than it was before. We've seen atrocities all over the history of humankind. Maybe the shock comes with the idea that life should be easy, peaceful, and with a soft music behind. No, life is, and the events of the world have shown that life is difficult and life is many times unexpected. But we need to fight for the ideas we stand for, and for the things that makes us who we are. So yeah, of course it's disturbing, but it's only disturbing if you look at it. The thing is, it's difficult to look and to understand what we see. That's why people, who was it? Pascal? That says something like this, like it's easier, or Machiavelli, I don't know. It's easier for people to trust what they see in their eyes instead of thinking about it, because one is seeing beyond what you see. Maybe a little bit connected with the literality we talked before. So it's always been difficult, but it's a fight that at least gives meaning, at least to me, to keep on with the ideas that these things deserve the time and deserve our energy.
And I think in one way, kind of thinking what Tony was saying at the beginning, there's something, unified. There's something almost courageous to be spending your life specifically dedicated to exploring these ideas. And you were speaking about this kind of this group of existentialists collecting together today, whether that's live or in the future viewers. But another side of that argument is everyone to an extent. Everybody is questioning these ideas in their own way, and actually finding a community like we have created and are creating. There's something a lot easier to be able to question in this collective community way, and have the resources that we do. And I think everybody's thinking, but it's almost easier, we're almost fortunate to be thinking about it in this community rather than just flailing around isolatedly. And a lot of my clients come to me because they have been questioning these questions alone, and it's incredibly scary and painful. whether that's finding a community within existential philosophy and having those resources, or whether that's in music and collaborating in that way, or arts in that way.
But I remember, Natalie, there was one of your that lovely thing you did. Was it last year when you interviewed all these people? And there was a guy who said, that he would go to a dinner party and never not leave if we were talking about this subject. I can't remember the name of the guy, but it's almost irony, isn't it, that we would we as a group would love a dinner party around this. We would drink all night. We wouldn't leave. Whereas most parties I go to, I want to be there under 30 seconds and I'm wanting to leave. So isn't it ironic?
Mm. Remember that not everyone is ready for those questions, but once you start, it's very difficult to leave. Once you start, is almost like there is a point of no return.
Yeah,
this.
I love that. I love that.
What is your drive to continue questioning?
My drive. At
Why
some point,
why do you look at the disturbing?
Why do I look that it's disturbing?
At the disturbing, I mean, looking at things. Things are disturbing only when you look at it. You said, So what's your drive to open yourself to the disturbing?
I remember there was a writer that was asked, why does he write? And he answered, because I cannot not do it. And I think once you go towards these questions, you can't stop. You can't. I mean, it's very difficult very difficult, or even impossible without any huge defense mechanisms. Might be crippling defense mechanisms to see something, to not see something that you saw. So I cannot stop looking at things, but that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate the wonderful things that are here. Look at the space we have today. It's a wonderful thing to be able to communicate from two sides of the world and to talk about these things. Of course, they are difficult. Of course, they are uncomfortable. But the alternative is much worse, at least for me. That's why it's a choice. And it's a difficult choice. And it's a choice that might not be for all. Remember that these things are, and the struggles we have are the same as the ones that the Greeks had. The cave, the allegory of the cave is exactly that. Many will choose to remain in the cave, and there is nothing we can do for them because they have to choose, and that's the freedom. That's the exercise of freedom they have, even if it's not for their benefit. That's of course we can lament, we can suffer the idea of everyone not seeing something. We can't impose that thing on them. That's why, at least in psychotherapy, it's no use if someone says, "Oh no, you should go to therapy and I'll take you," because it's not something personal that the person chooses to work there. I remember in the public hospital, we had a specific team that dedicated themselves to traffic. So the people that came to renew their licenses and need to make a psychic test and have a certain space. And I would say, no, I don't want them, because they are not patients. They don't choose to be there. They are forced by the circumstances of their work. And in fact, that's the case. They didn't work in therapy. They just, it was just a part of the functionality of the demands that the government made. That's why it's first the desire to go there, desire to work. That's a very good first step to therapy.
I've got my eye on the time, and just like you say, it's once you start, it's very difficult to stop. I think we've all proved the case that it's very difficult to stop this, and even when we close today's session, we'll all be thinking, because we really can't stop. But in terms of actual time, we definitely have to bring it to a close, unfortunately. But I want to thank absolutely everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to come, and thank you for everyone that contributed, either just by your presence or just in the chat or part of the conversation, to make this event what it is. It's so nice to have a community. I think that's what comes for me today. One of the many things. It's so amazing to have this community to explore these questions, and it wouldn't exist without everybody that makes it so. So thank you so much, and of course a huge thank you to Marcos from all the way from Argentina. It feels funny all the way, but we've all the way. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Hope you leave with many questions, and of course thanks to Natalie for the space and to keep on making these sort of things. They're very helpful. So thank you all. Thank you, Natalie.
Ciao. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.